Well, hi, and welcome to the Quarter Hour podcast, hosted by Wade Kingsley. But not this week. Wade has taken a week off and he's asked me to guest host. Hello, my name's Liam Renton and I've worked in the Brisbane radio market for the last 20 years. I grew up here and have a real passion for my city and my radio market. Now, Wade was also my boss in the early 2000s, back when we used to call him Wadeo. He wanted us to call him Mr. Kingsley, but that was never going to happen. Later this week, I'll be talking to a radio host who spent over 2 decades on her station that was consistently number one in her market for over 20 years. And she also had a hand in a radio promotion so big that it was franchised and used around the country. And we can thank her for that. That's later in the week. Right now, we are replaying one of Wade's best. He recently had Robin Bailey on the show. Now, Robin is the star of the Kiss FM breakfast show with Robin, Kip and Corey. My early memories of Robin was when she joined B105 and the morning crew with Ian Skippon and Jamie Dunn back in the mid-90s. I was working there at the time and it was a great time to be in Brisbane radio. The station rated in the mid-30s and the crew was on fire, and it was really the first station to pioneer the crew format here in Brisbane. I just remember Robin being this breath of fresh air on B105. She was intelligent, she was sassy, she was strong, she would never let the boys walk all over her, and she had real showbiz credibility because she'd been on Hey Hey at Saturday. Having seen her at many radio events and premieres over the years, I can tell you firsthand just how hard I know she works. Without fail, at every event, Robin would have a tape recorder in her hand. She would work the room, she'd be doing interview after interview, and just getting real life content that she'd use on her shows later in the week. She would outwork any other radio host in the room, and she always had this unbelievable work ethic. She's dominated on 97.3. She's been part of some iconic emotional radio moments. Even just recently when the Queensland cyclone happened, Robin was living in the KISS building where they were on skeleton staff. She was pulling solo shifts, just keeping the city informed. I'm a fan of Robin Bailey. She's a radio icon in this city. So enjoy Wade Kingsley's interview with the recently re-signed to KISS Breakfast, Robin Bailey.
How are you finding the journey of being an author now in terms of all the publicity and retelling the story and doing interviews?
My husband Sean said to me years and years ago that, you always need a platform, and a book is one of those things that gives you a bit of gravitas that something else doesn't. And I probably should have realized that because I come from a family of writers. My grandmother was quite a well-known writer, and my mum's got a couple of books as well. But it is different. And I think it's because people can reference back, like in radio, what are we doing? It's air. And yes, you can go back and listen to, podcasts or bits from the show, but it's not the same and it's not always in the same context. Whereas in a book, you literally can pick it up and go, oh yeah, where was that page? Whatever. So yeah, it seems a bit more solid.
Yeah, it's kind of like a historical document all of a sudden.
Yeah,
isn't
and
it?
also like I've only ever worked in teams. I've been doing Brekkie Radio for 37 years. So I did solo for a teeny bit down the Gold Coast when I did a national night show for regional, but the rest of the time you're in other people's context too. So this is the first time where I get the first, last, and always word.
You've got the in and the out. That's
I have.
it. I'm going to talk a little bit about radio because obviously people to this podcast will be interested in the radio side of your journey. But just a quick couple of things on the book. It's called Flamingos Aren't Born Pink, and it's really about this journey of life makes you, you don't sort of make your life. Was the title easy to come up with?
I wanted something quirky. I didn't want it to be like sort of radio-fied. I think this book is much more about, as you say, my life.
Yeah.
I did a kids' science show way back in the day for Channel 9 when I was working in Adelaide at SAFM, and then it turned to Triple M, blah, 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 like KAFM, that's right. Then it turned to Triple M. I've been all over the country, my friend. And I was working on a kids' science show called Hot Pink, called Hot Science. And one of those things was about flamingos aren't born pink. You can tell I've done a show this morning, can't you?
Totally.
And I'm back off holidays. I'm like, what's my name? Who am I? And that was just one of the statistics. And then when my editor had kind of gone through the whole story, and she said, there's something about there's an evolution in your story. So that was the name she suggested, and I really liked it.
Beautiful. Well, it's a good one to embrace because your story, not only from a personal perspective, obviously, and that's what the book goes into, because it's pretty raw reading, is warts and all. And I wonder what the difference is between turning up to work every morning at 5 a.m, thinking, right, my job is to make everyone's day brighter, I do that through storytelling and connecting with particularly your Brisbane audience over many, many years. Is there a difference between connecting as a radio broadcaster between writing and connecting with a reader?
Yeah, I think you have to tell a whole story. In radio, you can get in tangents and you get taken. And I think there's a thing in radio where you're much more feeling your way of on a morning about a certain story that's happening, and it might be based coming off something in the news, and you're reading the room a little bit more on a much more sort of immediate basis. Whereas I think in the book, it just has to be my story and I have to put my heart into it. And it was interesting because when I first wrote it, it was like 180,000 words. Oh my God. I mean, no one will ever see that manuscript, but it was just this kind of spewing forth. And then it required other people to, I pared it back a fair bit with things that I went, the public doesn't need to know that. But, and then it just was taking other people and them going, okay, this is an interesting thing for a reader. Because, when you're on air, or for me anyway, I get a sense, there's this time when you are storytelling where the magic happens. And I first learnt it with Jamie Dunn. Jamie Dunn was the greatest storyteller. He could take the smallest idea and weave it and you'd follow him. And I got to sit next to him for 10 years and really learn the craft of storytelling. And so I think that is very different to radio because you've got to have an out, right? And you've got to have a time frame and, you've got to have your co-host coming with you. You have to firstly sell them on the idea that they're actually engaging with you and not taking you somewhere else. Whereas in the book, it is this kind of story that you hope and it's got to be woven through, like you got to keep people turning the page. So, I can't do the tease forward, in 15 minutes, you will read this. That won't work.
You can't go to the traffic. You've got to keep moving.
No, I can't.
I'm glad you brought up Jamie because I want to ask you about a few men in your life. You've got quite a few men in your life and you always have. Jamie's passing recently, I think hit a lot of people by surprise for people who didn't know him as well. You knew him very well. How did you feel about it when you heard the news?
I was shocked, but I shouldn't have been. I knew he was really unwell and I'd only been like, Jamie was one of those people, if he liked you, he loved you. If he didn't like you, he hated you. And he would remember the hate from like decades previously, right? So, and he'd sent me this beautiful Lego flamingo to build with a note. And Jamie's notes always had a self cartoon of him at the top. And, I think he said something along the lines of, writing a book's a really big deal and you should be super proud of yourself. And so I'd kind of had that contact with him and I put a post up on Facebook and I'd sent him a really nice note, which he never replied to, which was very Jamie, like I texted him. I was just shocked. I was in a shopping centre car park and I cried. And I got told by Channel 7, I think, people were then, they'd heard the news and were then like going out to try and talk to people who knew him. And I immediately contacted his wife, Marie, and, just, it's such a shame. Like he was such a great, and whenever I talk about Jamie, I talk to Ranger Stacey about this. She's probably a little more magnanimous than I am, but I'd go, he's the lovable rogue, but he was such a bugger. Like, I mean, the man would, money was everything. He would find a way to turn a dollar and yeah, and he kept every dollar he ever made. I remember someone paid him for something $20 and he goes, well, that's going on the house. And I'm like, which one, dude? You've got 10 of them in Paddington. But, he was very generous with kids. The Royal Children's Hospital up here, which we did for 10 years, we raised millions and millions. And that's because he had his hand up that puppet's butt and he was, walking from bed to bed and really making kids feel heard, seen, loved, but then he was the bastard that if you crossed him, he'd never forgive you. So there we are.
They're all the sides of the personality. Did he get
Yeah.
a chance to read a draft or the book?
No, he didn't. And I've sent it to, Marie, he pre-ordered it. That's right.
Oh,
And when we came back, like when we got sacked at the end of last year, and when we came back and he did this he did this farewell thing because, when you do the great hurrah and say goodbye, and they spoke to Jamie, and Jamie came on as aggro and said, I felt so sorry for Robin that I've even forced myself to pre-order her book. So I know that Maurice got it and she will read it, but no, he didn't. And he's in it, of course. And so Skip, and like, we're on a 28 share in Brisbane. I
Yeah.
mean, okay, so we're left radio stations, like, let's be clear, but we dominated. Like, everyone knew what we did on the radio because everyone was listening in that commercial space. So it was a very formative time of my life. I had my 3 kids, or 2 of them, when I was on air with Jamie, and I remember Finn, my eldest, when I brought him in to show Jamie and Skippy, and he was like 6 weeks old. Finn reacted to the sound of Jamie's voice because he was so used to hearing it in vitro. And Jamie just thought that was the greatest thing ever. And he was like, yeah, am I his father? I'm like, no, mate,
No.
you might look short and bald, but no, you're not.
No hope of that one. I want to come back to your boys, your 3 boys in a sec, but a couple other boys in your life, Kip and Corey. This is not going over old ground because I think we've heard this story now, but about last year and how it ended and coming back. Also, I want to ask you about when you got the call, when you got the, hey, listen, let's have a chat. Was your immediate reaction relief? Was it like the world has righted itself? What was it?
I was really angry. And I was angry because, and if you do read the book, or whoever reads the book, one of the themes throughout the book is the way women have been treated in the commercial industry. And not because I'm standing here crusading about this, but because it's been bullshit. And it's been bullshit for a really long time. And in some ways, like, when it was announced this year in Brisbane, there was only going to be one woman, and that was Jackie O, for an hour between 6 and 7 as a repeat of the Hour of Power. That was the only female that was going to be on the radio station. And I mean, thank goodness that shifted, but that's insane.
Right, yeah.
And that can still be something that wasn't considered in the process. That's not why I got angry initially, but it is part of, some of the stuff that's still going on. I was angry because it felt like an abusive relationship. It's like, I love you, I don't love you. And you got to understand, for me, this was the second time it had happened. So I got sacked and then I got brought back. And, people have said, oh, why'd you come back? It's because I love it and I'm good at it. And this is my natural home. So yes, I gave our boss DB quite the hard time in that phone call. To his credit, he took it, and I respect that too. But once I'd that was just this, then it all sort of calmed down, and then Kip and Corey and I had a conversation, and we love what we do, and the industry now, there's not many jobs. So if someone's going to say you can come back and do something you love, yeah, I'll take that. Thank you.
Well, one of the themes throughout the book is grief. Not necessarily dwelling on grief, I didn't think, but more around the fact that this is a way to how to live when things fall apart. And I think one of the names that I'm going to bring up, and I hope you don't mind me bringing up, that is well known in the industry, is Sean Pickwell, who was your husband, and you got married, and then within 12 months he'd sadly passed away. What was it that you and Sean were attracted to in each other in those early days?
Okay. It's so funny because people go, it's so sad, but like, I put a smile on my face. Like, I did, my time with Sean was just brilliant. He was my boss at Fox FM when I was I was a producer for Grubby and Dee Dee, and I wasn't even like, I was kind of like a really, really, really junior producer. And he was one of the people we only worked together for about 3 months, but it was at a time when Austereo were really looking for new talent, and there was an opportunity to be sent, and you could either be sent to Canberra, Darwin, and I got an opportunity. Oh, Tassie, of course, that's where I went. And I went to, he helped me get this job in Hobart, and I got them put on air, and like, a lot of amazing things happened because of Sean. And it was like, as I said, 3 or 4 months. And then we re-met, 20 odd years later, his relationship had broken down with his wife, and I was 12 months after Tony had died. My boy's dad had died from suicide. So, and I was not looking for a relationship, but this big bear of a man, because he was like 6'7", came out at a concert that we were doing. He was there with the promoter, and I was on stage introducing the Australian acts. And he was like, "Robin," and just this massive bear hug. And then we just started to talk, and he was quite persistent. And, we just had a connection at a time that I was really sort of lost in everything. And he lived in Sydney and I lived in Brisbane. And it was a very slow burn because my kids had already been through enough. And it took me a long time to work out even if I wanted a sort of relationship with him. But, Shawnee was just such a powerhouse for my confidence. And he did say, because he was always behind the scenes, right? Like he was a content director and promotions and all that stuff. And I remember when I got sacked the first time from ARN and I went to Triple M, and he was helping with the contract negotiations, and then me coming back, although that happened after he died. He's like, "Oh, I never had any idea how tough it was for talent." I'm like, "Oh my
Oh,
God, you've been doing this how long?" So, I think I was still teaching him to the end.
oh, yeah. Well, and I think many people can relate to, you knew him intimately, but his warmth. The bear hug is the manifestation, but a good-hearted person, and still sadly missed by many in the industry, not only for his professional experience, but as a person. He was a great guy who I knew very briefly, so I can't claim any sort of.
He took a huge amount of pleasure in promoting people to be the best in an industry he loved. And I think that's a rare.
What a legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So finally to your boys. I've got a question from Spencer Housen. actually.
Oh, hello, Spencer.
Spencer said, you must ask Robin this question. So with Finn, Lewin and Piper, I can imagine the day-to-day of they grow up with you on the radio. So it's not like, they were sort of born into a royal family. Like you're born into a family, you don't get a choice. This is what mum does. Mum goes on the radio and talks about stuff. But in terms of the book compared to radio, was there any hesitation on their part? Because they also wrote chapters. Did they hesitate on any detail? Did they think, "Oh, Mum, we're happy with you saying I, forgot to do my fly up on the radio, but this detail in the book is a bit too much for us"?
No, it's interesting. Yes, they did. So they didn't read my manuscript. They had a ghostwriter read my manuscript and then really specifically talk to them with questions individually for them. And then their sort of chapters unfolded independently, because I was very, very clear that if they were going to be a part of this, which was their choice, I say they could have been like the Osbournes, the Osbourne documentary where the eldest daughter, the TV show, she has nothing to do with it. That I was totally fine for anyone or all or none to say, "I don't want to do it." But I think there was an element for all of us of making sense of the insanity of what had happened. And look, Wade, it's tough because there are things in those chapters that I read for the first time that I found really painful, and things like about being on air and how they didn't like it, and how at times they resented some of the things that I did. And you'd say, "Oh, you should know that." But I think because I was the sole breadwinner, because I had to work, because, I sort of justified that. So it was very important to me, if we were going to do a warts and all, that they had a chance to be a part of it, because I think their story is very important in this. And there are natural consequences for all the choices that their parents made, from their father's suicide to me repartnering to, they get dragged along, as children do, in their family's decision making. And part of that was very much on air. But and they're responding differently now the book's out. I think the eldest probably just wishes, it's done now. They've done he's done a bit of publicity. It's like, yeah, I'm going to get on with my life. Whereas I don't know about the other two. So, the youngest is quite enjoying it, but more just because, his friends' mums think it's really cool. But they're 21, 23 and 25 now. So they're adults, and and they also know they've had some pretty amazing experiences because of radio. So yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword, really.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the book, Robin, is out now. Flamingos Aren't Born Pink. I think in terms of memoirs, it's very different to other memoirs in the context of not only your life story, because it's obviously unique, but in terms of the people that are with you along the way, whether it be Skip, Jamie, Kip, Corey, ARN as a company, Austereo as a company, but most importantly, your boys. And I did ask someone in Brisbane to give me a word to describe you. And in my head, I thought, I bet you the word I get back is courageous. But the word I got back was beautiful.
Really?
Yeah, from someone who'd worked with you. And they said beautiful in the context of makes everyone else beautiful too. The warmth that emanates from Robin is someone who makes beauty out of situations where there may not naturally be there. And I just thought that was a nice way to wrap up, to hopefully, on behalf of radio, remind you how lucky we are to have you in our lives and to have you back on the air. And thank you for spreading the beauty and warmth around.
Oh, that's so kind. I will say that I think the greatest gift that I ever received was starting my career at 2WEB in Burke.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And having to realize that everything you broadcast, you walked into a town of 3,500 people, and those people were going to come find you in the pub if you weren't authentic and kind. And so, yeah, I think it was a lesson I took way back then of going, yes, there might be tougher conversations, but make sure you end up making people feel better. Because what's that old adage? They won't remember what you say, but they sure as hell remember how you make them feel. So make them feel something good.
That was Wade Kingsley's interview with Brisbane Radio icon Robin Bailey. Now, later this week, Wade has asked me to guest host an interview with an amazing radio legend, Caroline Hutchinson. She's been on the sunny coast in radio there for over 3 decades. She had an idea once that was so good, it was franchised to her entire network and paved the way for content to be emotional, real, raw, and a way to give back to local communities. Her idea was that big. I can't wait to tell you about it later on in the week. Until then, I'm your guest host, Liam Renton, on the Quarter Hour Podcast.